All right, testing audio here. How's the sound here, guys? Let me know in the chat if you can hear all right. I'm gonna let Mr. TA speak as well because he's coming through my speaker.
How we doing, guys? Can you hear me? Audio's good, apparently. Good sound. How do I sound? Can you hear me? That's the main question. It's sultry. Thank you very much. That's exactly what I was going for.
Loud and clear. Okay.
Both are clear. Oh, we've nailed it, mate.
All right. Cool. Okay, guys. So let's jump right into it. So, welcome back to another public live stream with Bitcoin Trade Group. Trader Mayne here. We've got the pleasure of Mr. TA Trader underscore M4TT joining us as well. So we're going to be doing, like I said, we're going to be doing these once a week and just sharing kind of our thoughts on the market with you guys, and just to give you a little glimpse of what we do every single day inside of the Bitcoin Trade Group. So with that being said, let's look at Bitcoin, because after everyone complaining about the lack of volatility, you know, here we are back at the 11K level, testing it again. I like to zoom out for stuff like this and remind people, you know, how fortunate we've been really since, I guess, April, with the crazy volatility that we've had. Because if you look, oops, 1 minute chart, didn't mean to do that. If you look at the hourly here, you know, people were complaining about this. Like, I saw so many charts on Twitter of this consolidation. You know, being like, oh, there's no volatility. There's no volatility. I'm like, anyone who thinks that this period of time over 2 days is no volatility, it's like you're staring at the chart too much, right? If you want to go back in time and remember what it was really like to have no volatility, remember when it was like this for like an entire 2 months almost? This is low volatility, right? This is just 2 days without price moving that much. But at the end of the day, we still had a high of 10.9 here and a low of, you know, 10.4. So we're spoiled, right? And so when we don't have these huge $1,000 swings every day, all of a sudden people are like, oh, all the volatility's gone, all the volatility's gone. So just remember where we've come from and where we are now, and you know, what we're positioning up for here looks to be like potentially another move to the upside. So for those of you that tuned into the last live stream that I did, we talked about, you know, longing down here. The last live stream, we talked about longing down here. I'll give you kind of a hindsight explanation of the long that I took. And then where we're kind of at now and what I expect for next. But, you know, the long and short of it, didn't mean to be punny there, but is you don't want to be bearish at support. Yeah, I know, that was so bad. You don't want to be bearish at support. It's no different than the 6K floor, right? So let's assume for a moment that this is going to break down. Let's say this is the next move, right? So everyone wants to get, you know, short on this break, right? If it's going to go to 7,500, you want to short here and ride that move down, of course. But there's no reason to be bearish at support. If you think support is going to give out, right, your goal is to short the lower high, or once it's a confirmed lower high, your goal is to short that top, short here, right? Or if this was going to be the one where it breaks, you wanted to short here, or maybe here, right? That's where you want to be bearish if you think that we're going lower. You don't want to be bearish here, because even though this is now a triple bottom, doesn't usually happen where a triple bottom holds. You don't want to be shorting right into support, and the 6K floor is the exact same, right? So if I put a line here at 6,000, and everyone goes, oh, well, you know, the 6K support is getting weaker. It's like, sure. But let's see how many times the 6K floor was a good long, right? 1 long, 2, three. 3 trades for sure. If you bought 6K, you made money every time, right? You could consider this a win. I mean, a small one, but a win. And then let's assume there's 4 trades total here. 1, 2, 3, and then 4. You're right on 3 out of 4 of them. So even though, yes, the bouncing ball meme, right, support is getting weaker, every bounce is getting lower highs, sure, that is all valid. But the time to be bearish is not when we're already at the floor. The time to be bearish was, up here. Thinking, okay, maybe this is the one where it breaks, or here, or obviously in this instance here. These are the areas in a downtrend, right, where you want to be bearish. Otherwise, you got to wait for the support to give, and then even though this didn't retest the level all the way, it did have a little bit of a pullback. Like once we close through here on the daily, that's your short signal. So you either anticipatory, trying to short the lower high, or you're reactionary and shorting once it's confirmed close below. But 3 out of the 4 times, the long worked. No different here, right? Made money this time, you made money this time, you made money this time. Sure, this time you might buy it and it might not work. But if you got the previous 3 trades correct, you're making money. So if you're winning 3 out of 4 trades, you're doing fine. So the time to short, again, is not here. And if you go look at Twitter on these dates, a little homework for you. Go look at Twitter on August 29th and 30th. Go look on Twitter on July 28th and 27th and 29th. And go look on Twitter on July 16th and 7th and see what the sentiment was on crypto Twitter. Go to the majority of people on Twitter that post, consistently. Go look at comments under my posts, under Don Alt's posts, under Mr. TA's posts, under Cred's post who say we're at support. Guys who said this is support. Go look at the comments under there around these dates. And what you'll see is everyone is bearish here. Then everyone gets bullish, when we're at resistance again. So
the best one, Scarface's replies to his 9,400 when he was saying it's going to move up to 11K, and everyone's like, no chance, it's going to go to 8K before it even sees 10K again.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
I had 3 comments on my post where I said, hey, this is support. I'm looking for a bounce here, and I didn't know how high it was going to bounce. Like I said, 10,200 is where I'm looking first. And I had 3 different people tell me, no, this is going to 8K, you're looking in the wrong direction. And they're always perfectly wrong, right? And so it's the same thing with the 6K floor, right? Don't get bearish at support. Even though support technically is getting weaker, the bounces have been getting shorter. This is a little different because see this bounce here? Then the next bounce was bigger. So I think that changes the dynamic of this level as opposed to here. Where the bounce was indeed weaker every time, and maybe Mr. TA can attest to that. But to me, I think there's some significance here that the second bounce we had off of this level actually created a higher high relative to the first bounce. So I think that's significant, but at the end of the day, this is support until it's not. So if you think support's going to fall, let's say you're high time frame bearish. I'm just going to get rid of some of these squiggles.
Get that object tree up, my friend.
I know, I'm learning.
You're allergic to that.
I'm learning. Okay, so let's assume that this floor is going to give out because you're bearish high time frame. Fine. If you're shorting at here, you've gotten wrecked every time. Okay? You either short a lower high or you try and figure out where the lower high is going to be, right? Into previous level, blah, blah, blah. So realistically, we could see something like this, right? Into this area here, run this swing high, and then it could break down. So unless you're shorting here, wait for a breakdown of a level, right? Here's where you don't short. Right here, even though it's a 4th test, because this could cause a bounce enough to stop you out, right? If you want to short it, wait for the confirmed breakdown and then get short. Otherwise, you want to get short above the level. So it's crypto Twitter 101. Go look at everyone's going to say, oh, well, the multiple tests, is it getting weaker? Sure, but don't try and guess which test is going to break the floor. That's what people tried to do this entire bear market. Everyone's like, when is it going to break 6K? A guy who gets a lot of hate online is Flood. And as much as, everyone was like, oh, he's just bullish every time it hits 6K, it's like, well, he was right half the time, more than half the time. Eventually, you long 6K, you get wrecked. But if you get right the first 3 times for multi-1,000 point moves, who's really doing it wrong? So same goes here for me. There's no reason to be bearish right at support. Wait until support breaks. This is daily support for me. If I see a daily close down through here, then absolutely, I'm going to be looking to short it. Otherwise, I'm looking to take profit and look for potential bullishness. So with that said, how did I get in this long? For those of you who have watched my last couple streams, I've talked about a bit of a losing streak I've been on. I've seemed to slightly kick that trend. I caught a really nice long here, and I'll show you how. So we have our daily support here, so that's just this daily order block here, and I've marked the top and bottom of it with a line. So 934.750 and 908.550. That's just the top and bottom of this candle here. Where do order blocks matter? Near key SR, and my key SR level is actually from the weekly. So what I did is I marked the low of these two candles, and I'm just going to delete all my levels here to show you why real quick. The reason I like the low of these two candles is for market structure, I use candle closes. Okay, I don't use wicks, I use candle closes. So if we have a low, right, a high, a higher low here, this is a lower high technically, but it's not confirmed until we make a lower low, right? Like if price were to come through to here, this is now a confirmed lower low, which confirms this is a lower high relative to this one, right? So basically, until price closed the weekly below here, we technically don't have a lower low on the weekly. So what I did is I marked out this level, and I did this on stream with you guys, and I said if we close the weekly below here, this would have been last week, that constitutes a lower low on the weekly. I'm now looking for shorts based on that. We didn't get that. We actually held the level, and I'll show you. So I had my weekly SR, that level there, and then when we came into price, when we came into that price level here, we had a nice setup, right? So there's that daily order block here. I just realized this is a little muck, but whatever. We had the daily order block here, and we had our weekly SR level. So we traded below the weekly SR level. We reclaimed it. I zoomed into the hourly, and my trade was based on a reclaim of the weekly SR and then a reclaim of, I did this on the 30, but a reclaim of this level here. See, right on top of the weekly SR, there's this little 30-minute level here. Right here. And the reason I like this level is this is the up move here that led to the final drive below these lows into that high time frame support, and that low held, right? So I saw that this low held, we capped price. Once we got above this, that's when I longed, and I put my stop down at 9,400. I saw a lot of people take this trade. They got stopped out because their stop was too tight. Anytime I use my stop like a cunt, I usually get stopped out. So if you're putting your stop here at if you're entering at 95.30 and your stop's at 9,500 because you're like, oh, it's the edge of the order block or it's the edge of the level, you got to remember this trade is based on a weekly support level and a daily support level. So you don't want to set your stop too tight because you got to realize on a weekly level, we can have all this fluctuation on the 30-minute, and on the weekly level, what's that going to look like? It's just a wick, right? So if I zoom out to the weekly, we have our level. It's a wick below and then a close above, right? But zoomed in, you're like, oh, is the level holding? Is it not? Is it holding? It's not. And it's like that. You got to be cognizant of that when you're setting your targets and your risk. My entry is based on the low time frame, but this is a high time frame setup for me because it's a high time frame level that I'm trading into.
Was that a hammer close?
Yeah, that was a hammer close. So it's a high time frame level I'm trading into. So my analysis in terms of where my stop should go, where my target should be, can be based on the higher time frame because that's where the trade is based on. So I'll show you what I mean here. Part of the reason we went up here says, okay, I entered on the 30-minute, but if I'm long here, where's the nearest high time frame liquidity, right? Or a swing high? To me, it was this is the target 1, this is target 2, which we've just run. Now, this would be target 3, right? Where am I wrong? I'm wrong below the swing low here. I'm not wrong below this 30-minute order block, okay? My trade is not invalidated below here. It's invalidated below the swing low. So you can use the low time frame for target setting, right? You know, target this swing high. That was one of my first targets, and as you can see, right, we came through there. Perfect retest of that level. But, you know, don't just you have a daily/weekly level here that you're basing your long on. So don't set your stop based on the 30-minute chart. You know, set your stop relative to where you're wrong. Where does the level fail you? If it's a weekly or a daily level, the level doesn't fail on a 30-minute close below, right? So I saw a lot of people get stopped out here because their stop's too tight. I know it's nice to get 15R in one trade, but more often than not, especially in real trading, and this goes, you know, as well for Forex, you're never going to get away with those 5-pip stops. And if you are, you're trading tiny size. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to have a stop $10 from your entry if you're trading 250K contracts on BitMEX. You'll shit yourself because shit like this happens all the time. So you need to give breathing room, especially on Bitcoin. I leave extra room. Anyone who has followed me long enough, I always talk about setting my stops. I don't set them at the edge of the block. I always leave room. I give an extra bit of breathing room because, you know, there's wicks and just all sorts of crazy shit happens. And I'd rather not get stopped out of a good setup because my stop was just too tight because I wanted that really big risk reward number. So that's how I got long here. I ended up closing the trade into resistance here. So I'll show you where that level comes from. That's this level here. So clearly this level is all the way from June 30th. This has been a clear level, right? Support, resistance, resistance. We broke through, back below, resistance, resistance. And now we're right back into the level. So to me, you know, if you didn't get long here, there's a couple ways to kind of look at this. And the way I would, you know, consider is if you didn't get long here, the time to long is not right in the level, right? Like, to me, there's no problem shorting here. There isn't. This was a valid short here. This was a swing failure pattern. I took this trade. I got stopped out on one short, and then I, you know, closed the other one here when we didn't break down. But, you know, there's no problem shorting here. It's high time frame resistance. And to me, I can long here, right? We closed through 10,980, you know, today. You just open a long, in my opinion. Super easy. Your stop goes down here. That's a disgusting X. Your stop goes like down here, right? And you can open a long as soon as we confirm close to this level. So to me, there's nothing wrong with that with shorting here. Your invalidation was here, so it's obviously wrong now, but super close to entry, right? If you're shorting here and your stop is here, that's a pretty close invalidation. So if you didn't long here, you wanted to look for a long in this consolidation, right? And what happens was, right, we had this nasty wick. Everyone thought this was the top right here. And it looked kind of toppy after that, right? But you got to remember to zoom out. You know, as much as that looked toppy, as soon as we rounded off here, it started looking really bullish again. So the trade here was this one. So I had this 1 hour level. So this is the up move. So first I'll show you 10-4, sorry. 10-4 is this here, right? So once we basically stopped this move and we started going sideways, we formed a base here at 10-4, right? Once we form this higher low in 10-4, basically that's your SR level that needs to hold, right? If we closed below here, you would get short. So it's just this down candle that led to the kind of the base of this new range or consolidation. What I marked was this 1 hour candle that traded us, right? This candle here traded us into 10-4. So once we got above here, to me it was very simple. And I posted this on Twitter yesterday. I said if we can hold here, I think we go up. If we lose here, I think we go down. So to me, the trade was if we can hold here, you get in a long, stop goes down here, tighter stop would be here. If we break down from this gray, I would look to get on a short on a close through 10-4. So that was kind of my plan. So we held the level, formed a higher low on the H4, and now we've obviously formed a higher high. So what the bulls want to see now is us get through 10,980, in my opinion. That's the level I'm watching. We've taken this swing high out here, as you can see. If we can get through 10,980, the most logical area that I see next is 11,300, right? And this swing high all the way up at like 11,600. So there's a trade there, right? If you're not long yet, don't freak out. We can get in a trade on an SR flip here, right? And target there. So that's how you play the uptrend, right? Play with the trend. Once you break a level, you want to buy the break, the pullback. I wanted a pullback to here. You're not always going to get that pullback that you want. I saw a lot of people had this level, right? Like 11.2. Break the level. Everyone wanted the perfect retest here to long. You're not always going to get that, but if we break the level and then we pull back, this is still considered a pullback. It doesn't have to pull back and retest the level perfectly. I'd actually venture to say that in Bitcoin, most of the time you don't get that perfect break and retest. So it's super funny when you see majority of crypto Twitter mark a level, right? And they're like, okay, breakthrough here, I'm buying the retest. It's like, well, how often does Bitcoin give you that perfect retest? I would say not that often. I say it's more likely on Bitcoin that you get a breakthrough and then it continues going, and then you get a little pullback, and then it just continues, right? But the logic of the setup remains the same here. You broke your key level, you're now looking the long pullbacks. Of course, you want the long to the level again, but you don't always get that. So maybe Mr. TA can comment on that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the big things that I've seen around is that people aren't adapting to the market, and they aren't. I don't know whether it's a case of just inexperience or not enough data set, or they're not actually trading. But if you're sometimes, one of my main strategies is momentum following and where to get pullback. And, at times you don't know whether you need to, or you're going to get a shallow retrace or you're going to get a deep retrace, and you kind of have to adapt to it. And I think the problem with a lot of people, especially newer traders, is that they look for the reward for the risk. So they don't want to look to get into the trade. The main thing is, if something's going to rip on Bitcoin, you just want to get in on the move, like on any pullback at times. But sometimes you won't be able to find a logical stop loss, or you won't be having a logical pullback to a level which you've got marked, i.e. an SR flip or something like that. And then when do you put your stop? So sometimes you have to sacrifice that risk reward in order just to actually jump on the gravy train and not miss the move. So on Twitter, I see the same setups all the time. I see the same patterns. I see the same everything. And, it's almost like you find a load of textbook traders. People have just basically got a trading 101 book. Oh, here's a pattern. Oh, great. So when price does this, all I have to do is mark that line, and as soon as it gets touched again, I'll buy it. Doesn't happen. There's a real Bitcoin. The way Bitcoin moves, it doesn't. I mean, no markets just act in the most perfect way. It's very, very rare that they do, in my experience. But one thing I'm not seeing from a lot of people is that adaptability. They're not adapting to the markets. They're not adapting to the trends. When we get ranges, they short the bottoms, they long the tops. There's no real thought. There's no real strategy. It's just all emotional trading, and it's very, very obvious to see the people that are doing it. And the kind of thing that really stood out to me as well was that it does become a meme when you say, well, everyone's doing this, so that's not going to work. But realistically, it's also a meme to say, well, yeah, it's true. I will counter those people. But I've seen the same levels get marked out countless times from people, and the market doesn't move in a way where, okay, break this, and on a retest of it, then we go long, blah, blah, and you don't get it. And it's almost like people aren't really learning that, one, that type of trading is just perfect case scenario and gives you a kind of a roundabout idea to actually long at that sort of level. Not, I need a $2 touch of this level before I buy. It's like, well, okay, if it's going to start retracing back to it, hit that market button and buy it, not just wait for it to hit it, because it doesn't happen more often than not, or it's going to pile through it, and then you're going to sell it because you think, oh, that level should be respected, that level should push us up, but it's not doing it. In terms of where I think it's going next, then yeah, I've got a lovely little level, $11,044.50, which is like a little fake out level on H1. You won't be able to find it on anything above M1, but it's something which is a really subtle thing. It's a really subtle level, and no one will be looking at it. But for me, you can have that obvious level, and my chart, which you can't see on obviously looking at your screen, has hit the top of my supply zone almost to the dollar, and then it's reacted down. But if it starts moving up, then there's a fake out level on M1 for me, and it could go up and hit that, and then that's when we get the reaction south. So a lot of people wait for a close above, say, 11,000, ignoring the fact that there's resistance still on the lower time frames, and the lower time frames are important, because often what you'll find is that on a big dump or a big rally, the less time that is spent at a level or a particular price point, more it's going to react, because it's indicative of huge buying or selling. So for me, I need to see it move above that 11,044 level, which again you won't find on the higher time frames. It is on M1. Above that, I think we've got not clear skies, but I would basically wait for a close above that, and then start to look to buy. And when you say that's the other thing as well, right? A lot of people think, but as soon as I get that single close above this level, I'm buying it. But you need to understand it can retrace, and markets give you a signal of intent. They don't say, right, okay, as soon as I close above this, I'm just going to keep going up. Breakout traders are probably the traders that get fucked the most. They will wait for that close above a particular support, above a particular resistance level, or below a particular support level, and as soon as they get it, they sell, and then they don't realize that they've become a liquidity for a fake out or a reversal. So it's a hard strategy, in my experience, to actually nail. And which is why when I talk in the group, it's like I need a convincing close above a particular level before I'm happy to take a trade on it. So yeah, when I say we need a close above 11,044, it needs to be convincing, and it needs to be a candle with strength. It needs to be a move with strength. There needs to be a certain type of reaction or non-reaction above that level. And then again, it's not just a continuation straight off the next candle is just going to go and pump another $300-400. You need to see the consolidation. You need to see some sort of potential test of the level, or you need to see that the price can't even actually get down to the level again that you were looking to trade, to get that signal that the strength is there. So yeah, it's a funny old phenomenon watching people put these SR flip patterns, but in my experience, SR flips are actually very low probability, but they tend to be one of the more talked about setups on Twitter.
Yeah, they're the easiest one to show in hindsight, right? Because you could be like, oh, well, broke the level here and here, now it's support, and that's, when you do it. So it's a lot different live. So a perfect example of what Mr. TA just explained here, right, is for me, I wanted, once we broke through here, I wanted to long. Well, I longed from here, but to me, there was a long, I want to add on a pullback here, right? This is a convincing close through a level, right?
Yeah.
And when you see that we did pull back, we didn't pull back as far as I want, but price showed a willingness to get bought up here after being pulled back, after closing through the level. This is now, to me, I got to buy this, because chances are this is out of the question now. This isn't going to happen. This closed through, and this pullback, it's like, okay, we're pulling back into a more intermediary level, but at the end of the day, price is showing a willingness that, hey, this level's been cleared now. So and chances are is what will happen is if we do come back to this level, it will nuke right through. And people will be like, oh, well, now I'm going to buy it, missing, the actual move. So we'll see. It basically, to me,
Which is funny because
sorry,
the
go ahead.
whole of Twitter seems to have that. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say it's funny.
I was going to say that it's funny that we talk about that.
You go first.
I was going to say it's funny because most of Twitter are basically looking at a $7,500 level, which, funny enough, Trader Mayne put up on Twitter 3 months ago. But they're all thinking like, oh, because prices moved up, that's the logical place it needs to pull back to. So all my buy is going to be there. And I've not seen one person out of any of these big accounts, out of any of these respected accounts, I've not seen one person even entertain the idea that price could drop down, like 100% it can, but that it will fall short of that level. So everyone's like 7,500 this, 7,500 that. But yeah, it's just like what you've just described there is perfect. It doesn't get back to the logical level. And then if you see that tiny little range where you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these like shitty little candles around the 5th of August, you get that close above it, and then it's almost like you look at a couple of different factors. The one on the right hand side, mate, yeah. Those candles on the right, it's like, okay, so you've got that, you've got the confluence of the fact that price couldn't even get down to the base of the support level, that it got bought up, and then it hit resistance, it dropped again, it based, and then it still got bought up, and then you're like, okay, well, a close above any candle body within this tiny range, let's buy it. So it's not just as soon as that level gets hit, I'm buying it on a retest. There's 1,000 different things you need to consider, which many people don't.
Yeah, one of the most common things I see with newer traders is they want, if this happens, then I'm going to do this every time. And to me, trading very much is a if this, then that thing, right? And so like when people are like, oh, he says up or down, it's like, yeah, up or down is how I trade, right? Like if we can get above here, I want to look for longs, and if we get below here, I want to look for the shorts. The difference is saying, hey, here's a support level, it's either going to go like this or this, right? Sure, I mean, I guess that's useless, but if you have rules being like, hey, if we get a close through here, I'm going to be looking for a setup to long. If we get a close through here, I'm going to look for a setup to short. It is if this happens, then that happens. But the problem is something people want something that happens 100% of the time. And one of the most common questions I get is they say, hey, well, the level broke, but it never pulled back. And I'll say, well, yeah, did it pull back there? And they go, well, it didn't pull back to the level, right? And it's like, that's a very common thing I get. It's not always going to pull back to the level and give you that perfect entry. Like if it does, of course, that's awesome. What you'll find more often than not is you'll see it break through a level, then like some sort of failure, and then it touches the level, and usually this means, well, actually, this is a fake out and a deviation above the level, and then it gets blown down. The continuations, I find, usually in crypto don't give you the deep pullback you want, but that's something that new traders want. They go, well, it needs to retest this order block. It needs to do this. It needs to do that. It's like, it doesn't need to do fucking anything, right? Have your rules saying if it goes to this level, I'm looking for longs, and realize that long might not happen right at your key level. It might happen on a lower time frame setup. It might pull back a bit, but not all the way. How many times have you guys marked out a breaker? Most people's charts look very similar these days. Let's be honest. Price action has taken a big foothold. Large part in thanks to guys like Crypto Cred and Don Alt, and I post a bunch of stuff, Mr. TA, all of these price action guys, because people like it. They're clean. They're not indicators, they're clear signals, right? And that's totally fine. I didn't invent this shit. But if we all have the same levels, how come we aren't all getting shit right? And I'm guilty of this too. I get shit wrong. I have the right level marked here. I missed this entire long. I had the level. I've had this level since June, and I missed the long, right? So it happens. But you've got to be able to be, a little bit more fluid with the market. And I see so many people go, well, this is a breaker here, so it has to retest. And it's like, I mean, that's the ideal world. Sure. I would love for it to have retested this level, because that's what it should. This is even your kind of your BART setup as well. You know what I mean? Where it breaks down and then it completely retraces the move. And then I would have loved for it to go like this and then continue, but it didn't, right? So if you miss this long because you're waiting for it here, put that in your journal and make a note of it. It closed through my level, but it didn't retest the level. Doesn't mean that, your setup was wrong or your idea was wrong. It just means that you have to be a little bit more fluid and react to what the market's giving you. In my opinion, this level was out of the question once we made this low. Once we made this low here, I'm like, okay, any sort of pullback now is to me a higher low. But anyway, so right now where we're at, if I'm looking at this, this is basically the last stand, I think, for the bears before, mid 11,000s. I think we have this 12-hour level here that I like a lot. We're pushing right up into it after making a higher low here as well, right? This is a higher low. And technically, as much as this is a lower high relative to this high, right? What can happen is we can have something like this happen, right? And this is now an uptrend forming here that's eventually going to take out these highs. So you have to be aware of that. This is a higher low for now. We're grinding right into the level. We have SFP'd above 10,960. So, I mean, if you're short, or if you're shorting, you short like right now, in my opinion, and your stop is loosely up here, but you could have a stop right here, because to me it shouldn't come up here if it's going to go down. If it's going to go down, it should drop like now.
I think it's not. Personally, I think it's going up further. I just think, the fifth lower high, and everyone's looking at shorting it, and I know it's a meme and I've talked about that, but it's happened too much. And going back to what you said, like we had two huge bounces off of that 9.5k ish support. First one, $2,000. The second one, $3,000 and a bit. Like that's really significant for me. Combined with a couple of higher lows, and general bearish sentiment, and let's just not forget the fact that we've just like completely rocketed off that floor once again. I just think it's going to catch a lot of people out, and we're seeing a fair amount of strength at the moment. I mean, of course, I can be wrong with this, and below sort of 10,300, I'll be looking for shorts, but this level is looking like it wants to push us above 11k, and then above 11k, you're right, 11.4, 11.5 is the next target. But I'm just starting to think, on a higher time frame chart, it still just looks like a bullish continuation. If you go into the daily or the weekly, it just looks like, I think you'll come look back at this in like 6 weeks, and people they'll slap themselves ahead and go, oh my god, like this was so obvious it was just going to continue. But
yeah, people thought this was the top too, remember? Like this was a top. Yeah. This was a top.
Yeah, and the problem is as well is the very strong similarity on that daily chart for the past 2 months or so to the entire bear market of last year. So again, people are looking at it like, well, it's just going to do what it did last year. It's going to drop down to 7k because we've got a really obvious level on the weekly there. And I've said it on Twitter, like, yeah, sure, like it can be a logical level. Doesn't mean price has to get there. Besides, we had $1,000 drop last week or the other week. It's just, I think a lot of people are just looking at things wrong. And going back to your point about SR flips and the levels like not being retested, like it's the same as when we were moving up from 4k to 14k. Everyone going, buy the dip, buy the dip. We get like a $200 dip, and no one wants to buy it because they're thinking, I'm going to get a $2,000 dip.
Yeah.
You've got to look at the buying strength. You've got to this is what I mean, like people aren't adapting. You need to be a bit more fluid. You need to be a bit more prepared to throw away the logic, because sometimes you are just going to miss the entire gravy train if you're either one, going to look to step in front of it by trying to short everything that looks like resistance, and two, if you're just going to wait for an absolutely perfect test of a level.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things here, guys, the most common time a flip or a buy works is the first time, right? This, and this. Same thing here, right? Super aggressive move up. The first retest, boom, there's your buy. Never got it again, right? It pulled back, but you never got it again. And here you've been lucky where you've had 3 attempts here to get in. But a couple of other points here. I mean, obviously, one thing to be aware of is this. So this is, I'm going to butcher this because I'm not a pattern trader, but if I'm not mistaken, this is some sort of triangle. Get this up here. Right? Like, is this valid? Am I drawing this correctly? I think that's close enough.
Don't know.
So I posted this on Twitter, and I said, which way is this going to break? And the results were absolutely hilarious because no one fucking knows. If you're trading with the trend, you assume it breaks up, right? But we don't know. So to me, 7.5K, as much as everyone is saying it now, I think it's still on the table, but why try and guess? Why try and just say it has to happen? Your bias that like 7.5K has to happen will be the reason you miss the breakout to the upside. And vice versa, if you're like, no, it's not going to 7.5K, it has to break up, will be the reason you miss 7.5K. Don't have a bias in mind like this has to happen. Price has to go here. Price has to do this. Get that fucking shit out of your mind. In my opinion, you trade this until it resolves, right? We could do this, right? And then we could dip down and then break up. We could break from here and go up. Right? We could come down here and then just break down. So why try and guess what ways this is going to break? All that this tells me is that price is compressing, making equal lows here essentially and lower highs. Price is compressing, volatility is drying up. What does that usually mean? A really big move is coming soon. If I throw my Bollinger Bands on here, what do you think they're doing? They're getting tighter, right? If you throw any of your other like momentum indicators or volatility indicators, everything's constricting because the ranges are getting smaller. This is just a range with a diagonal line instead of your classic range that everyone learned from Mr. SZ. It's the same thing. This is just a range. Play the range. Look for longs near the bottom until it doesn't work anymore. Look for shorts near the top until it doesn't work anymore, and then be prepared when it does break one way or another to get in the trade with that direction. So this very well could come up here, test the meme wedge, break down, but just have clear levels in your mind, right, of what's going to happen. Nothing has to happen, but have numbers in your mind where you say, okay, at this point, I'm looking for this. So for me, if we can get above 10,980, I think you're longing into the 11,000s. If we lose 10,400, which is the base of this consolidation, I think you look for a short back down to 9,800, which is basically this level here. Here's another perfect level that everyone wanted to retest from, right? Break above, everyone wanted to retest here. There's your pullback. Like that's a pullback. This is a convincing close through a level. You now have 1, 2 H4 closes above the level, and if you zoom in, why are you not buying on this pullback here? It closed through your level. Is it because it didn't perfectly retest the level? If that's the case, you're going to miss 90% of the trades you look for.
Because I was thinking of that level. I was going to bring that up. I remember at that point, you and Scarface were super bullish and got everyone in the long in the group. And I was like, well, I just need to see a break above 9,700 first. And I think I was in bed. You guys are up. You got everyone in the long. I woke up. And we got that like extra push up to 9,800 or 9,900.
Yeah.
And then it dropped, and I got in. I was like, well, if you guys are bullish, right? You've put a signal in. This has broken my level. Okay, I just market bought at like, I think my position was like 9,870 or something like that. I'm just riding up because I thought, you know what? It when it does, I mean, you look at the hourly on that range that broke above the previous high at sort of
here.
On the hourly, it's 2nd of September, and I was just thinking, this is an extremely strong move. This is just not gonna. It's either not gonna let anyone get in, or at the slightest pullback, people are gonna wait for the lower. So I just bought it like 98.70. It was my
to me.
Buy, so
this is the strong move, right? See how it dribbles off, launch, 2 down candles, launch. More down candles, move is less explosive. Even more down candles, move is less explosive. So this is when the move is losing velocity. Here, when the move first starts, we just broke a key level here. It's gonna rip, right? This is when it goes parabolic. So couple more points I wanted to make here. I'm just going to see what time we're at. We're getting close to an hour here, so we'll open up the floor to some questions maybe. Something that's possible here is some sort of fake out into this level. There is a level here that I think could reject price. It's this daily level here. Okay, right? We have this swing high. I could see price come into this level here, 11.3, right? And then reject at this trend line as well. That could be a potential short if you want, but that's still, $500 away. So don't be afraid to, be in a long up into that level. But this is an area that could reject price that I'm watching. We could see a move up into kind of 11.3. And then if we see some sort of strong rejection, I might look for a short. And what I'd be looking for on the low time frame basically is a move up into the 11.3 area. Lovely.
That's a strong supply zone.
Yeah, this is and there's a lot of confluence here. What I'd want to see, right, is like some sort of wick up into there and then a breakdown, and then I would look to short, and your stop just goes above the wick. That's how you keep the risk. And then if you're right, you've got a killer entry with a tight stop, and if you're wrong, you're stopped out right away before this thing nukes to 12K. So that's the only other place. I would either look for a short right now, or I'd look for a failure into this cluster at 11.3. Otherwise, I think, this thing could just launch. I think one of the biggest problems, and this is kind of the last point I'll bring up for the video, is a lot of people are poorly positioned with their spot. And this is true in our group. This is true on Twitter. This is true to people who are in my DMs. And the reason I can tell is just because they're very concerned about when to buy back in, because they've sold their spot here and they're like, oh, they've sold their spot at 11K and they're like, do I buy back in? I like to always say I treat investing and trading differently, right? My buying and selling of spot versus, my day trading, whatever you want to call it, largely because of time frame, right? When I'm looking at my spot buys and sells, I'm looking at the daily at the lowest. I'm mainly focused on the weekly. When the weekly closed above here, I was like, all right, I'm holding, right? And obviously that was smart. If we get a weekly close below like this 95 level, I might sell some spot. But for the most part, I haven't really sold any spot. I sold some like on this wick up to like 13K. I sold some, but I've rebought some of it. But I'm not really interested in buying and selling spot. I positioned myself down through here. A lot of people laughed at me and would screenshot and post it under my tweets for the following 2 months when I was buying spot at 5,500. People were making fun of me. They're like, "Oh, you said that," and my tweet exact words were, "We might go to 3K, but don't get caught missing the bottom, waiting for 3K. If it doesn't happen, I'm starting to buy now." And so I started buying at like 5,000, 5,500, all the way down to the 3,000s, and then back up till 7,500. So I've got a very nice average price where I don't really want to sell. It would be super nice to have sold all my spot here and then rebought it all here, right? Like obviously, right? But for me, I would rather just try and catch these swings on BitMEX and make Bitcoin that way rather than trying to time the market and outperform the market. This is a monster uptrend. Most people, I guarantee you, would have outperformed themselves if they would have just bought and held, as opposed to trying to buy and sell every top and bottom. So in terms of spot, why am I trying to outperform what I believe is the start of a macro uptrend? Why am I trying to outperform that buying and selling my spot when I already have a really good average price and I can just play the swings in the meantime and make more money that way? So I think what's happened though is a lot of people have been buying and selling their spot, trying to time the market and outperform the market, and now we're worried that they're going to get left behind. So they're freaking out, being like, well, if it's going to 7,500, I want to sell now. And it's like, I think you should already know what you're doing. Like, you should have a plan already for that, and realize that if you sold spot at 11K, you might have to rebuy that spot at 12K. And that's the cost of doing business. It's just like having a stop loss and a take profit. Where are you wrong? You sold your spot at 11K. Where are you wrong? Where do you need to buy back in? Just because you're not dealing with a regular trade on BitMEX, if you're dealing with your spot buy and sell, you should still have an area where, okay, I was wrong. This is going to continue going up. I want to buy back in. So I feel like a lot of the panic that happens at this level here, at these tops here, are people who have not planned their spot holdings well and are freaking out, worried that they're going to miss the bus. And, you know, what I usually tell these people is like, listen, man, I don't really plan on selling any of my spot until we're, you know, through all time high. I think this is the start of a macro uptrend. Even if we come down to 7,500, I still think we're going to continue up and be at 16K before we know it. So why am I trying to time 7.5K and 16K when I can just hold my spot from down here and just play the swings in the meantime and make up for it? So that's what I would, you know, suggest is if you're worried about that, if you've been trying to outperform the market with your buying spot sales, just be aware that that's very hard, right? If you would have,
like how long are you aiming to hold on to it for?
Yeah.
Like, are you aiming to hold on to it for 3 weeks and then okay, play it a little bit? If you're aiming to hold on to it for like 2 years, just fucking hold on to it, man.
Yeah.
Buy more if it goes down. If it goes up a little bit more, buy more. Just keep buying it. It's like probably the easiest thing for most people.
Let's say you bought one Bitcoin at 4K. You could technically make more money by buying it at 4, selling it at 6, rebuying it at 5, selling it at 10, rebuying it at 7. You'd make more money if you nailed every move. But what are the chances that you do 250% over the last 4 months? According to crypto Twitter, a lot of you are doing that, so I apologize. But realistically, you're not doing 250% in 3 months. You're not, or else you're the greatest trader in the world. So, and if you are fucking right on, you know, why are you on
99% of people, the best traders in the world on Twitter?
Why are you on Twitter if you can do 250% in 3 months? Why? You should be printing money online right now and sailing on your yacht through the Adriatic Sea. But realistically, simplify it to that. Am I going to outperform 200% in the last 3 months? No. Then why are you fucking around trying to, right? Realize that if this thing is going to go through all-time high again, you're probably have been better off just holding that spot. And if you're very nimble and you know what the fuck you're doing, don't listen to me. Do whatever the fuck you want, right? Like I'm not here to tell you how to manage your money. I'm just saying the majority of people, me included, I'm not going to outperform the uptrend buying and selling my spot. I would way rather just take day trades, catching the moves, you know, and then just hold your spot the entire way, and you're going to do better that way. That's just my opinion. Obviously, at the end of the day,
you're allowed to have more than one trading account with a broker as well, right? Or an exchange.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got like 5 accounts with BitMEX with totally different strategies on each one.
Yeah, and you can hedge, right? And instead of trying to sell all your spot here, open up a low leverage short.
I don't believe in that.
Or you know, there's so many things you can do. Is the bottom line, right? In my opinion, and I've said this before, in a bull trend, which we're in, you want to focus on accumulating BTC, not USD. I don't really care so much about the USD value because I believe in 6 to 18 months it's going to be a lot higher than it is now. So I just want to accumulate more BTC. And the worst thing you can do is sell your spot and have to rebuy higher and lose Bitcoin. Because not only are you losing Bitcoin, but that Bitcoin that you lost is also increasing in value, right? And it's the flip for a bear market, right? If you're shorting Bitcoin, not only are you getting more USD, but the Bitcoin's getting cheaper to buy. So that's just my opinion. I don't know, Miss Tia, you got anything to finish off with? And then we'll see if anyone has any questions.
No, I agree with everything. I just think most people will do better holding, having a side where you just, I mean, I've got stuff on a ledger where I just, you know, I know what I've got there. I know how much it's worth and I leave it. And, you know, my average buy was something like 5,500. It's like, great. Like, if it does go down to 7,500, like, okay, sure. I mean, I could sell here and buy back lower, but what's the fucking point? Because what if it doesn't go down there? But, you know, you can have a, I mean, I've got that spot. I've got another account where I've got low leverage position on some spot holdings. So, you know, it's like a 2.5x. So whatever Bitcoin goes up, I'm making dollar value and I'm also making Bitcoin on there. And, you know, those times when you've got like a swing trading strategy, as I do, and I'm very much an intraday trader, and I miss moves a lot, you know, because that's the nature of trading, but you don't have to be in every move. like that dump from 10,300 down to 9,400. I was looking for a short, but I missed it. And when it starts rallying again, I mean, I got into this move, but if I hadn't, then I'm not going to beat myself up for not getting into a day trade on it, because I know I've got a low leverage spot account that's moving up. I've got my spot holdings that are going up, and if there's something where you think, well, I do want to short this level, 11k is a big resistance, and it does make sense, then short it on a different account, and then you wait for a break of it, and then you long it on a different account. There's so many different ways you can play it, but it comes down to your organization. But I mean, one of the things I've told the group is basically to obviously have a plan for your spot holdings, but have your allocated funds in spot BTC, because if you, let's say, I woke up 2 hours later than I had on the day where I actually bought my Bitcoin, then I've missed the move and I'm really pissed off about it. And people get that and they think, oh fuck, I've missed this, I missed that. But if you've got an allocated funds, like somewhere on a ledger or whatever the hell else, you don't have to worry, because you've just made $200-300 per Bitcoin whilst you've slept. So you haven't totally. If you're net long Bitcoin, you're going to find that if you do miss these moves, you're not going to be stressing as much. I know obviously the idea is to get as many Bitcoins as possible, but it's not any trader, who's been in the legacy markets or who's been trading crypto for a fair amount of time, they will all tell you, and I'm talking about successful ones and profitable ones, you don't have to get in on every move. So I'm not in a intraday position right now. If this now goes and rallies $300, I've missed that move, but I know based on my experience that it will pull back and it will offer me a logical entry at some point. So, but not everyone has that emotional control. Not everyone has that experience. But if you've got Bitcoin in a ledger, or you've got a low leverage spot position somewhere on a different account, you've made money anyway. So it all comes together. So that's one of the things I tell people to help with their emotional control and their FOMO.
Yeah, I think part of it is, like you said, on the ledger, a lot of people have all of their coins online on an exchange and stuff. First of all, don't. That's a terrible idea, because, God forbid, Binance goes down or BitMEX gets hacked or whatever happens, you don't want to be screwed. And that it makes it too accessible, right? All your money is on an exchange. It's so easy for you to, take a trade on it. Whereas if it's on a ledger, you really have to think, am I really going to take it off my ledger, get it on exchange, and sell it? So, I'm net long Bitcoin when I think we're in a bull market, which is what I believe we're in now. So, like Mr. TA said, I'm not stressed. And that's why I feel like anyone I see who's emotional when Bitcoin is going up tells me that you don't have a lot of spot Bitcoin. And that you're freaking out about not being in, because when Bitcoin goes, it fucking goes, right? Like, imagine waiting to buy your spot here and then waking up the next day and it's literally up, $1,000. Like, you're gonna shit yourself, right? And then if you waited, it's gonna come back to the bottom, and next thing you know, we're at 10k. Like, how many people thought we were gonna retest 6k? And some people still think we're gonna retest 6k. Could we? Absolutely. Anything is possible. But if you're banking on us coming back here so you can load up on spot Bitcoin, you got to be prepared to be wrong and realize that we might never see that price level again, right? So I'm much more inclined to own spot Bitcoin and not really worry about buying and selling it. I lost money on the way up here trying to buy and sell Bitcoin. I would have made more money if I would have just held all the Bitcoin I had at March 30th. If I would have just held it till now, I would have made more money than I did doing what I did. And so I'm preaching to you something that I know is hard to do, because I tried to do it and I consider myself a not bad trader, and I still, I caught some major moves. Like I think I bought here, I sold here, I bought more here, and like I sold here and I bought here, but I mucked up this entire move, right? Like I sold a bunch at 6k and then ended up like rebuying it at 7k. So it's hard to do. And especially when we've been in a bear market and then low volatility, you'll all of a sudden be trading this massively trending market. So, anyways, that's I think that's where we'll call it. If anyone has any specific questions, let's see.
Just say Kyle has just commented saying you technically don't make anything until you cash out, so not really. But I mean, you've got okay. So let's say you do have in your a spot account or in a low leverage spot holdings account, and you've woken up and you haven't got a day trade position on, but your spot holdings are worth more. You've made that money, sure. I mean, the price of it has increased. It's up to you to sell by 100%.
Yeah.
Totally agree. But you technically haven't missed the move unless it goes up and then comes back down again.
Kyle, you sound like the guy
who. What my point was.
You're the guy. You sound like the guy who I said when trading was a zero-sum game, who was like, "Well, not if you include fees and blah blah blah." It's like, okay, the idea is that every person that's buying is selling. It's not technically zero-sum. And no, yes, of course, you technically don't lose money either until you sell. So that altcoin that you're bag holding, technically you haven't lost yet because you haven't fucking sold. So, let's see.
But then you've got things like the BitMEX insurance fund as well, right? So
yeah,
it's not totally zero sum.
Yeah, well, I mean, the BitMEX insurance fund, Arthur's retirement fund, hence why you shouldn't keep too much money on there because I swear he's just going to cash out one day. 17,000 bitcoins or something. It's even higher now, I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure they cash out every day.
Yeah,
I've read somewhere he cashes out the Bitcoin every single day.
That's crazy. Open interest is at $1 billion, or it's approaching $1 billion. That has been a notorious sell signal in the past. So we're either going to dump from here at the open interest 1 billion mark, and it's going to be a massive, nasty fake out. Or if we hold over 1 billion open interest and we go to make new highs from here, I think that's the base. So I think we're at a very critical point. I either think, I think the shorts here are very high risk, but high potential reward, because I do think if we do dump from here between 11.5 and here, if we do fall off and fail somewhere in between here and this high, I think the next dump takes us through 9K. And the open interest meme would be there, and then it might take us a while to get back above there. That said, if we are to just, let's say, nuke through here, and we hold, the open interest, holds over 1 billion there, I think that forms a very strong base that would send us to like 16K. So very interesting point. Price is compressing. I wouldn't be surprised to see another before a move. I mean, a lot of things can happen here. Have your levels in mind. Hopefully, we've made our ideas very clear here for what we're looking for. And yeah, wish you guys the best of luck out there. I'll be back potentially with Mr. TA or just with myself next week for another one of these public streams. If you want to see more of these, I do them, Scarface does them, Mr. TA does them on a daily basis in the Bitcoin Trade Group. You can find info in the newsletter that you're getting or on our website. If you got any questions, feel free to DM any of us. And yeah, looking forward to chatting again soon, guys.
And there's all of the information about the group is on this live streams page, and you can also check out our free newsletter. There's a link straight to it as well.
All right, guys. Chat you later.
Catch you later.